Welcome to the Conquer Your Battlefield podcast, where we come together to discuss some of the more significant struggles and metaphorical battlefields that we've faced along our journeys and share some insight on how we've conquered them. I'm JD McGibney, and today I'll be chatting with a woman that combines jazzy elegance with the power and confidence of heavy metal. A woman that instantly becomes the life of any party. She's the singer of the acid doom band Old Blood, and she even knows where Ronkonkoma is on the Long Island Railroad. Miss Kat Braithwaite. How you doing today, Kat?
I'm doing great. How are you, JD?
I'm doing really good. And I'm really happy that I actually get to see you and talk with you for the first time, in like 3 years at this point.
Indeed, yeah. It was late August, I believe, a few years ago. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
great to see you
Actually,
again.
it might be over 3 years, I think, at this point.
Hmm.
Oh man.
Yikes.
I
I'll have
my
to
sense of
look
time is
back
like
in my, yeah. It might still be March 666 of 2020 based on what we've been dealing with the past few years. So yeah.
you know what? I think your math adds up, and I'm just gonna go with that.
Sweet.
Ah, well, today we're going to be talking about caregiver stress. Using the definition provided by the Mayo Clinic, caregiver stress is simply the emotional and physical stress of caregiving. A caregiver is anyone who provides help to another person in need, such as an ill spouse, a partner, a disabled child, or an aging relative. Caregiver stress is a type of burnout that can manifest in many ways, some of which include feeling overwhelmed or constantly worried, being tired and having irregular sleep patterns, gaining or losing weight, becoming easily irritated or angry, losing interest in activities you used to enjoy, feeling sad, having frequent headaches or body pains, or even substance abuse. Kat, we were talking prior to this interview, and you opened up to me a little bit that your boyfriend had been having some medical issues, and you have basically stepped up and taken over a caregiver role in order to help him while you guys were dealing with figuring out exactly what's been going on. Or how is it that you feel, even though it's relatively like a newer thing for you, how is it you feel that the stresses of being a caregiver in such an intense situation have started to manifest for you?
Let me count the ways, my friend. Um, when this first happened, I had just gotten back from a 3.5 week tour, coast to coast, 2 days prior to my partner falling and hitting his head,
Oh, wow.
and subsequently leading to several seizures that he had never had before in his life.
Jeez.
And we still don't know if he fell because he had a seizure or if he is having seizures because he hit his head. And the doctors haven't been able to tell us anything about the whys. But we have been in this crazy holding pattern, just trying to get as much information as possible from all of the tests, all of the doctor's visits. It began 2 days after, like I said, a Monday morning, I'm laying in bed. He walks into the bathroom. I high five him. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going back to work until Friday because I was taking some time after being, you know,
Yeah.
all over the place for 3.5 weeks. 21 shows in 24 days, I believe it was.
No
But
rest for the wicked, as they say.
oh no, none to be found. And then all of a sudden, this happens. I take him to the ER.
Hmm.
They run a ton of tests. They keep him overnight. And when the next afternoon they say he's fine to leave, they're saying, oh, we're not seeing any problems. We don't even think he had a concussion. 6 days
Really?
later, yeah. 6 days later, however, he has his first seizure, first thing in the morning. Next day, he has another. Again, first thing in the morning. I'm freaking out. Thankfully, he has another doctor's appointment the following day. So I'm accompanying him to these appointments to let them know what I'm seeing, because when he goes into these episodes, he doesn't know what's happening. He just thinks he's kind of blanking out for a second and then coming back.
And meanwhile,
And
how much time is like passing between like when they start when they finish?
these are running anywhere between, like, over the course of this period of time when they've been happening, they've run anywhere between maybe 5 and 10 seconds.
That is like
But
intense.
it feels like forever, especially with the first few, because they were full on. They were grand mal. They
Ooh.
were scary. And the only, my only real solace was the fact that in high school, in my math class, my senior year, I got seated next to the one and only epileptic kid in our school. Therefore, I had to learn everything that had to be done if he were to go into a seizure. Now, this was probably one of my very first bouts with severe anxiety. It led to, I believe, a D in that math class, because
Understandably so.
I'm sitting next to this kid, and every sound he makes, I'm, what do I have to do? I'm at the ready. I'm 17 years old.
Jeez.
I'm, at the time, 5 feet and 3/4 of an inch. I'm only 1 inch taller now. But this guy was like 6 feet tall. So I'm like scoping out the room. Does he have room? If he falls down, where's he going to land? So when this is happening to my partner, this is the first thing I'm thinking. And I'm like, okay, thankfully this is happening first thing in the morning. The bed is really close. Um,
And
you
thankfully, you
know,
had like it sucks that you had that experience at 17, but at least now you're able to take that experience and put it towards someone else who needs that
exactly.
assistance, someone that you love, someone that like you're
Yeah.
obviously close with.
Someone I don't mind grabbing if he's, about to fall down.
Yeah.
And he's also 6 feet. And again, I'm only 5'1" and 3/4 of an inch, but um, I had to quickly just like get back into that mindset of how to handle this kind of sudden, unexpected Uranian crisis. And it got to the point where, and all of these were happening first thing in the morning at the beginning. And so it got to the point where I stopped wanting to wake up in the morning. I was
Oof.
afraid to wake up in the morning because I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm like, if we can just stay here and sleep soundly, everything's okay. Don't sit up, don't get up, don't move too fast, just stay in bed. We'll be fine. Oh, but wait, yeah, we've got to go to work. We've got to do our lives. So that started to become, I already have insomnia issues for many reasons, but
Mm.
that became intense because I would lay there in bed planning what I would do if it happened in this position. What if it happens if he's already walking? There's a bedpost there. Is he going to hurt himself? Like, I'm thinking I need to move this elliptical trainer out of the bedroom so he doesn't trip over it and fall or whatever. Um, and yeah, it really took a toll on my sleep, on my comfort levels of just being awake. Plus, there were all the doctor's visits. At the beginning, we were running back and forth to his primary care doctor.
Mhm.
Then he got referred to a neurologist who, upon that first visit, said, okay, well, you can't drive anymore
I mean, which
to
makes
him.
sense as it's definitely
Of course,
a safety.
especially because as a person who works in property management, he often was having to inspect roofs, which meant he had to
Oh
climb
my God.
ladders and he had to drive from property to property. Uh, so that was kind of like, oh, okay, so how is he going to get to work? What's he going to do? Most of his job involves all that driving and all those things he's not allowed to do now. So uh, he was suddenly home.
How long has this been going on now?
This began on March 28th.
Oh wow.
We got back from tour on the 26th, Saturday night. That was the first night that I had slept in our bed in, almost a full month. And then 2 days later, he's getting up ready to go to work on Monday, and that's when it all hit the fan.
Yeah, this has been going on for like 4 months at this point. I have have they you had mentioned that they were happening in the morning. Have they stayed in the morning or have they gone to different times of the day?
Well, what happened was after we visited the neurologist, he got a prescription for an anticonvulsant, and that that pretty much was helping quite a bit. But he was still having a few episodes here and there. They were still happening in the morning, either um, right around when we would get up and he was making coffee or brushing his teeth. Usually he was like bending over before it would happen. He was like at a 90-degree or a 45-degree angle physically. Like we would do yoga before we got up in the morning. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put an end to that. Because that's what happened the second time. We had just done some yoga and he got up and stood up. And then before he even was comfortable standing, he was in that state. And but since then, once the medication started helping, um, they were reducing in severity and frequency, but they were still happening. And
Hmm.
so he had another meeting with the doctor, and the doctor's like, wait, they're still happening? That's weird. That shouldn't be going on now. You're on this medicine. So he changed the dosage. And since then, he's had, actually, prior to the change of dosage, he was having what is called an aura,
What's an aura?
which is what happens right before a seizure. It might be a little bit of dizziness. It might be pins and needles feeling. It might be tingling. Um, and he would have those every so often, and then they would just come and they would pass. Sometimes they would lead to a little mini seizure, but this was right before the last change in dosage. So, um, and he also had one after that fact, a couple of them in the middle of the night, which just shocked me. Like I'm laying here, full insomnia state,
Hmm.
trying not to freak out about what might happen in the morning. And lo and behold,
It
I
happened at night.
turn over and it's happening right there. And I didn't know what to do. So we talked to the doctor again. They gave him something else. So far, so good.
Keeping
Right
fingers
now, I'm
crossed.
like, exactly, knock wood. I'm just hoping that this is what's going to work. Um, I did find myself very stressed out throughout all of this, though. I'm taking time off of work to run to the doctors with him,
Hmm.
to drive him places because he's not allowed to drive, and, missing out on my work hours and missing out on pay. And so I start freaking out about that and getting a little, not really resentful, but just kind of like, okay, we have to fix this now. Like, let's not let's not wait for the doctors. Let's do something, do whatever we can do. Um, and I'm a nutrition coach also in the background.
Hmm.
And so I started making sure that his diet was on point and really focusing on what was going on the plate. And I even got really mad one night because I made something that I knew had the things that he needed, but he was kind of like, oh, I don't really like this and I don't really like that. And I was just like, dude, just eat it.
Oh
It's
my
gonna
God.
be good for you. And that stuck with me for like a few hours because one, I'm a good cook. And two, I was like, okay, I know you don't love cauliflower, but
You
you
gotta,
know,
yeah, I totally get it. And like with all the added stress for like months and months and months piling up, and you know, you're, I can imagine just like your fuse is shorter just because like you're constantly trying to like replenish it, but there's all these things constantly happening. So it's just like, when something small like that happens, like I could totally see why you would get like, you know, resentful in that moment.
ticked. Yes. Yes. I mean, and I've got a day job, so, and which is also extremely stressful. It shouldn't be, but there are things about it that, kind of continue after the day is over, that it's kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm home now. I need to be here. I need to be doing this now. And that was really getting under my skin and making me want to, you know, making me grateful for those times when I had to cut work to go do stuff. But then at the end of the day or at the end of the fortnight, I get my paycheck and it's like, oh, yeah, those days that I had to take off, those hours that I missed, they're not on this check, you know.
Yeah, and that's
Uh,
something that's there's two things that you brought up that I think are really important for anyone that's in like a caregiver role, whether it's a partner, like a child, like a relative, a friend, what have you. Um,
mhm.
if you're in that role where you're taking care of like someone that you care about, a loved one, you do have to take that time off from work, and then you do have that that financial strain which you guys are
Yeah,
facing because one, he's having issues being able to go to work
yeah,
properly, and then you're also having to deal
not
with that.
being able to work.
Yeah. And then you
Yeah,
also have the
and not
emotional stress of, like you just said, you don't have any downtime. You have the stress of work where you're constantly going. You have
yes.
maybe some time in the car when you're coming home, but let's face it, we're in Los Angeles
My
and we're in traffic, and that
my
is not
my
relaxing.
That's not even, no, honestly, my solace has been my 2.5 hour commute to rehearsals on Thursdays because I
Mm,
work 5 minutes away. My commute to work is, I can't even listen to a full song before I get there.
that's really close.
So, yeah. And in some ways, that's fabulous. But in other ways, that's taken that chunk of time that I used to enjoy. I could listen to, half a podcast on the way, the other half on the way home, or what have you. But, I go to rehearsal in Pomona
Oh
twice
wow.
a week, and we rehearse on Thursdays and Sundays. Thursdays at 7 p.m.
Oof.
I live on the west side. So, yeah, it's a 2.5 hour commute at least, or sometimes more, sometimes a little less on Thursdays to get there. It's a 45-mile drive. So it's not 44.4 to be exact. But
44.4 and 3
yeah,
inches.
probably maybe a couple of centimeters thrown in. But it's that became my solace, that Thursday drive, even though, yeah, sure, traffic, but it was the one time that I was completely alone, that I am completely alone, and nobody can ask me to do anything because I'm driving, you know?
Yeah. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't make for themselves, is that alone time. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm glad to hear that you found some alone time, even though it is in the middle of traffic. But like, you have alone time to just be you. Like you said, you have time to listen to music. You have time to listen to a podcast. You have time to just be you. Because
Hmm.
regardless of who we're with, whether it's someone you're like the most comfortable you're ever going to be with in all of your life on this planet, you're never
Hmm.
truly fully yourself until you're by yourself, because we connect with individuals in very specific ways, and those that connection is heightened when we're with that person, or we're with that group of people. So when you're finally by
Indeed.
yourself, you can decompress completely. So I'm glad that in all of this you have that time for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it helps a little here and there, especially when it comes to rehearsing, practicing music, because that's where I warm up and that's where I practice what we're going to work on in rehearsal. I haven't been doing that much, as much as I'd like to at home because I'm not by myself, um, ever, other
Yeah.
than those times. So it also takes me back to after our last tour last year. I know that I already had some anxiety coming off of this tour, just because after the one that we did in the fall, um, we came back and I immediately caught a cold,
Oof.
and then started stressing out so hard that I had a attack. I have multiple sclerosis, and I had my first MS attack in over a
Oh,
decade.
I'm so sorry.
And, I mean, MS has been a harsh task mistress, I guess. I've learned a ton. It's why I became a nutrition coach, because the medication they were giving me was making me sicker than the disease. So when I was coming back from this last tour, I was like, okay, I got to make sure I am re-entering properly. And so I had all these plans. I had recipes planned. I had meditations planned. I had, my exciting trip to the farmer's market on Wednesday morning, the week after I got back, because I can't go on Wednesday mornings anymore because of my job.
Mhm.
But
Breathe.
when I got back, I was so anxious that I wasn't going to do it right. I wasn't going to re enter properly, and that I was going to make myself sick again. And then I didn't get sick because all of a sudden I had a sick honey to take care of. And I kind of feel like I definitely didn't get the rest and relaxation that I needed coming off of that tour before
Mhm.
going back to work. But, you know, I know that at least I did the responsible thing about taking that week off. Because, again, if I hadn't taken that week off, I may not have been here when it happened. I'm glad that it happened when it did, because if it had happened 2 days earlier,
Who
who
knows?
knows?
Yeah, it's having to deal with something like that, especially when it comes out of nowhere, and then you don't have any answers right away. So not only are you taking on that caregiver role, but like you guys are dealing with something on top of that where it's like you literally don't even know where to like begin. So like you have the added stress of trying to figure out what it is, taking down every little note, making, copying down and writing down like the hour of day, like the angle of the shadows of the sun, how many bugs were in the room, like
Oh, yes,
any
what
little
phase the
thing.
moon was in. Seriously, dude, I was on it. Every time one of these episodes occurred, I pulled out the phone, had the video going. I checked the time.
Mhm.
I got I had to delete them because I can't watch it anymore. Like, just seeing him
Yeah.
just helpless like that. But um I was basically creating a PowerPoint presentation for the doctors. You
Which
know.
is the best thing you can do, honestly. Like
Yeah.
how
Yeah, we had the notes, we had the video, we had, the times, we had everything. And calendars just festooned with details. And that became my just like, okay, anytime something happens, get it down, get it down, get it down. Once things stopped occurring, I was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. He knows what to do now. He's got his calendar now. He's got his PowerPoint presentation. He knows where to put all the information.
so
And there hasn't been much new lately.
so question for you. How long has it been since there's been an episode?
Just about 3 weeks.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
the relative scheme of things. That's like a really long time, and that is
Oh yeah.
fantastic news. So, mazel tov.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's basically long enough to go coast to coast on tour with your band. So yeah, it's
There you go. That's a whole tour right there.
and come back exhausted. Yeah.
uh,
Um,
since in that time, in the past 3 weeks, have you found that you've still been like kind of like on edge, or you felt like you've been like jumpier than you normally would be?
Little bit, but that's also because within these last 3 weeks, he also came down with dun, da, 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 COVID.
Oh shit.
So we set up a room, and he's been in that one room for the past 10 days, pretty much. Or not even, well, yeah, a week and a half.
Yeah.
And today was the first day he tested negative. and he's positive that he's negative now. So
That's the
I'm
best kind of
stoked.
positive
I'm
to
very
be.
happy.
A positive to being negative.
Exactly. Exactly.
Good. And I'm imagining that like you at this point have also like avoided catching COVID.
Somehow, yes, negative Nelly over here. I mean, we
Oh,
both had it back at the beginning of 2020,
oh
in
wow.
February of 2020. So it was before everything shut down, before the
Oh,
vaccines, before, we even knew fully what all the symptoms were.
so you got hit pretty
And
hard.
yeah, well, we had had kind of a perfect storm of international travel. We had had six international travelers staying in our home with us. Um, for the first 2 months
Oh,
of that year.
wow.
After traveling to Seattle, where that whole thing started, I think we even drove past that nursing home where
You
that
got
first
out,
case was.
hugged everybody there, got some pictures with everybody.
I
Wow.
mean, it was close to where I grew up. We went to my to visit my parents for Christmas, and my little sister and her family had come over from South Africa, and they were staying there with my parents. And
Mhm.
so then after we came back from there, they came down here and stayed with us for a couple of weeks. Then after that, my guy's nephew came over from Ireland and stayed with us for the majority of the month of February. It was while he was here that we both got the nasty. So this past week and a half, it's kind of been like, okay, I'm constantly checking on you. How you feeling? How you feeling? How you feeling? Like every time I walk into a room and I say that, I'm like, God, am I saying that again? I'm sure he's sick of hearing this. Like sick of me just asking him how he's feeling as opposed to, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want for dinner? What do you want to?
Not cauliflower.
Clearly. Even if it's the cauliflower and gnocchi from Trader Joe's, it's the best stuff. But anyway,
There's
anyway.
gnocchi. Hold on. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Okay.
We did not mention the
I
gnocchi
know.
part of this.
I know. It's the bomb.
All right.
Especially if you're trying to, not if you're trying to look good for a few photo shoots down the road. Like,
All
you
right.
don't have
So
as much. Uh,
I'm
but
gonna
yeah,
come over and have some of this gnocchi. So I'll be over for dinner in like 10 minutes.
molto bene, molto bene. Tutti a tavola a mangiare.
Ah, man, I know nothing other than, spaghetti and rigatoni. That's the extent of
I
my
got the
Italian.
spaghetti, I got the reggaeton. Okay. But you're also a musician, so you got that. You got the pianissimo.
Surprisingly, my music theory compared to like a majority of people is like really minuscule. Like I know enough music theory to communicate with musicians in a room to be like, hey, we're in this key, playing this scale, I need this kind of harmony, this is the rhythm I'm playing. But like you give me like actual like
Okay.
I can't act, I actually cannot read sheet music.
I read it slowly. I used to be able to read it quicker. I used to be in orchestras as a kid growing up, so that was part of we were tested on that. We had to know what morendo meant and things like that. I still don't remember,
Ah,
but yeah.
the thing that this is not being on the this is not going to be on the quiz, so you're good, you're safe.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, I mean, the last few weeks have been easier, but just trying to not catch COVID has been the thing, but also making sure that I'm preparing food that's going to help him heal, um,
Yeah.
and keeping that in mind every time I go into the kitchen.
Yeah, and that's also something too that I think the idea of like being a caregiver, especially in the especially in the last like 2 years, it's something that a lot of people have had to do, and a lot of people, I think can relate to because you have people who get sick and have to quarantine, and you're trying not to get the rest of your family sick, so you're reliant on the people that you're living with, your family, your friends, your partners, and
Mm-hmm.
so the people who are not sick have had to take on those caregiver roles for shorter amounts of time than you have over the past couple of months, but it's still something that people have
Right.
have can relate to, and especially with something like COVID that is so transmissible, you have to do it in a very delicate kind of way, so there is another level of stress added on to the normal caregiver role. So like you have been dealing with like more and more of this stuff over the past couple of months, and if you haven't heard it lately, you're doing an amazing job, and you should be commended. And there should be an award given to you right now. So
You know what that award should be? That award should be like a week-long nap. Because
that sounds perfect.
yeah.
And a
I
foot
mean,
rub.
I
And a
also
foot rub.
oh, yeah, I could go for that. I mean, I work in a Pilates studio and I manage this Pilates studio. I'm not a trainer,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of serve that role for a lot of people there as well. I mean, I guess I'm good at it. I'm tired, but I'm good at it. Um, and so I feel like, yeah, it is one of those things where I'm just constantly putting out, putting out. And during this time, I also decided to get back on track with my own healthcare because I started recalling, like, okay, well, I went to the doctor with him and he was like, oh, when was your last this? When was your last that? And I started thinking to myself, wait, when was my last? You know, I don't consume much Western medicine just because I like to do a lot for myself by myself and just heal as much as I can with diet and lifestyle.
And I can imagine just
And
like they're like
yeah,
having MS and having to deal with you've had to deal with a lot of like medical professionals in the past, and I can only imagine the level of burnout something like that brings with
indeed,
it. So I totally understand. You're like, I don't want to deal with this if I don't
that's
need
the
to.
best way of putting it. Yeah, traditional medicine or conventional medicine burnout. Um, in fact, when I was first diagnosed, those first 2.5 years, I was on medication. And after the first, I'd say, year, that medication kind of backfired on me and made me feel like I had the flu 4 days out of the week.
Oof.
And my joints became inflamed. I put on a lot of weight and I just never felt good. And I felt sicker than I did when I just got dizzy that first time.
Mm.
So that's why I became a nutrition coach. That's why I was like, okay, let me just clean out my diet, see what I can do from home, tapered myself off of those medications. And the doctor was like, oh, well, we've got something else you could try that's less impactful, but you have to give yourself an injection every other day. And
You're
I'm
like
like, I am not signing up for that.
you're like I'll stick to the cauliflower and the gnocchi. Thank you very much.
Yeah, once a week was too much. And now I was like, no. So that's why I became more holistically, well, I was always very holistically driven, but that's why I just followed my intuition and said, okay, I could probably do better. And I was diagnosed when I was 23. I will be 46 at the end of August.
So that's literally half your life.
Exactly. And I have barely had any symptoms since going off that medication.
And I've
I've
known you
had
for a couple of years
one
at this
other
point.
situation. Yeah,
And this is the
yeah.
first that I even knew that you had MS. Like I never would have known. And I think, you know, you're this whole thing that you're sharing right now, you're a testament to how important diet is. And like
Indeed.
if your body is fighting something, if your body is dealing with something, putting the proper nutrients into your body is really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah. When I went off the meds, I was like, okay, let me just clean myself out. You know, I stopped drinking for a while. I stopped, toking for a while. I just really focused on what it was that I knew was going to help. And I deepened my studies and, you know, found other role models. Like before I was diagnosed, the only thing I knew of MS was Annette Funicello and Richard Pryor.
Oh yeah,
And
wow.
yeah. And then I thought, oh, wait, Montel Williams, what's he up to? He still seems fit. He's still on the go. He's still talking, talking, talking. So let me see what he's doing. So I looked into what he was doing early on. And since then, I've just grown my list of role models, really. Um, and I use all of that information to help other people when they need nutritional help. And I've been using a lot of that information to help my honey here get
Yeah.
better. And hopefully, we can sort this out and find out what is actually the issue. so that I can actually know what to target, you know?
Yeah, well, it sounds like for the time being, like you guys are on a positive track, and you guys have been able to like give yourself a little bit of like of a reprieve to like catch your breath and kind of give yourselves a chance to think clearly. Because in a situation like that, you know, with him, it's happening literally to him, and then you taking on that caregiver role. You guys are kind of like always on edge, and like you don't really have a chance to think clearly and logically all the time because you're always like, oh, what do we have to be on edge to make sure that we catch this thing when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like,
Yes.
I'm glad you guys have a little bit of like a like a life raft, metaphorically speaking, to kind of like keep
Mm-hmm.
you going so you can figure out, how to move forward.
Yes. I think I'm just like counting down. I'm just watching the calendar and waiting for that 3 month mark because I've been told that after 3 months of no seizures, he'll be able to drive again
That's
because
great.
it means that it's, you know, adequately controlled by the medications. I would really like him to not have to be on all that medication, especially with this whole COVID thing. I sat down the other day, I looked at his prescriptions the other day. He has 9 different things now.
Jesus.
He went from taking the occasional ibuprofen for a headache, a few times a year,
Mhm.
to 9 things lined up and timers set on our cell phones. Like at first, I was the only one that had the timer, and then finally, I set it on his. I'm like, this is your medicine thing. But yeah, just it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and it's a lot to deal with very suddenly.
Yeah.
And I know he didn't love his job. He'd been working for that company for well over 30 years.
Oh wow.
And, things were changing, had changed significantly in the last few years, making it tougher for him to actually do his job. So there was a lot of frustration and stress there. I'm wondering if that had something to do with it. Like, I'm constantly looking at the whole picture and where something might have gone off the rails.
You had mentioned earlier in the conversation that you normally just have sleeping problems, like you deal with insomnia. Do you feel that, I mean, this is probably a very silly question, but do you feel that your sleep has remained affected since things have started to slow down? Like, do you still find it trouble? Do you still have trouble sleeping at night because of the added tension of everything?
The trouble sleeping that I'm having now has less to do with that anxiety and more to do with the point in life that I am at this moment.
Yeah.
Hot flashes, they come on a lot more when you're stressed out,
Oof.
and they always happen at night. And thankfully, we've got a great ceiling fan because that's become my
If
go-to.
get one of those little like
But
portable like in the room like air conditioners and just put it right next to your bed with like the little thing going out
right.
the window.
Oh, I mean, it's just I get the fan, I throw the covers, I assume the position, and just let the fan do its job. And he usually sleeps through it all. So it's okay. Um, he's a great sleeper. I, on the other hand, have never been the best sleeper. 3:24 a.m. and I are very, we know each other really well.
Your bros.
Um, yeah, oh yeah. Uh, but I definitely feel like there is a calming since the mornings have not been scary.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
And yeah, significantly. Now I'm just more like, for me, it's that song that I can't finish and that I need to change the lyrics to. It keeps
Mhm.
running, that one chunk keeps running through my head, and I'm like, okay, how am I gonna change those words? What's gonna rhyme? What's not do I want to rhyme? Like, does this matter? Blah blah blah.
What's the
So
flow?
yeah, that's the current uh insomnia. We're trying to rewrite our next album. So
Well, at least that is like a fun and like a creative thing that you're focusing on, and
yeah,
it's not like potentially a health issue.
I mean, it does drive me a little bit crazy because, I, again,
You would like to
not
sleep.
having the time, well, not having time during the day to actually work on the stuff. I lay down, so my brain decides, oh, you've got time now. It's quiet now. Okay, let's fix this thing. It's like, shut up.
Like
So,
I need a
yeah.
nap.
Yeah.
What are it sounds like you're starting to shift gears like cognitively, like on purpose to like slow things down and get back to more of like a normal routine.
Hmm.
What are some of the things that you're implementing to make sure that you actually do that?
Well, part of the new medical complex that I've signed up for, um, I'm first of all taking care of my own medical health and
Good.
just paying attention to that. I have a doctor now that I go to. I didn't
Perfect.
before because the last time I went to the one that was assigned to me, he's like, "Oh, just take this thing. I don't need to send you to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. You don't need that. Go just get these blood works done." I'm like, I'm a singer. I'm that's why I'm here. Uh, oh, let me take a look. Oh, it looks good. Just get these blood works done. Um, I found a
Yeah.
better system, and I am taking care of that and paying rapt attention to my actual state of health right now, which
Good.
amazingly hasn't really changed much. I'm surprised in the last like 15 years.
Well, it
But
sounds like you just take really good care of yourself in general, so that's you
I'm
know
trying, and I'm trying also to get back to the stuff that I was doing before I got this job, exercising every morning. Um, it kind of fell by the wayside because I have to be there at 9 a.m.
mm,
That was usually my workout time, or I would go hiking with friends at 9 a.m. on Friday mornings. And I haven't been hiking since August of last year, other than the couple of camping trips that he and I have taken. So, trying to get back to that, trying to get back to my walks. One of the things that I love is one of my nutrition, health, lifestyle coaching outreach people, who's also a very good friend of mine. We get on the phone once a week and take a walk around our respective neighborhoods because he lives up in Oregon. And,
perfect.
that's become my big, good, long walk every week now. But it's slowly creeping back in, getting back to the things that I need to do to take care of this thing and be there for that thing, you know?
It's I'm glad to hear that like you're making time for the things that bring you joy and help you decompress. So like the fact that
Trying to. Yeah.
you recognize that, like you need those decompression moments in order to like be, fully like on point for, what's going on with you and your boyfriend, or just
Hmm.
you and doing anything in life. Like you realize that you need that, and I'm really happy to hear that you're making it a point to do that because that's something that a lot of people just don't do. They neglect, that time because
Well,
I feel
I
like
like the fact that well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say just like it's kind of a thing in like especially in America where people kind of just see doing that as like oh you're slacking or oh you're taking the time off because we kind of just like work ourselves to death here, which is ridiculous in my opinion.
Indeed, we do. And one of the things that I noticed, I mean, and I like the fact that you use the word decompress, because one of the things that I noticed was as this was really like becoming so all encompassing and just every day for us, I was drinking a hell of a lot more.
Mm,
I was drinking way more than I was comfortable with, and I didn't like it. I was stressing and I was, decompressing with the bottle. And, I was starting to feel it in my joints and like just not comfortable physically. And so I just felt lazy. And I would just park myself on the couch and look, you know. And then I took some time off. Like after there was one night that just went way too much. And I was like,
Oof.
you know what? I need to just like find a date and quit then, or just take a break. I usually take like a month break off every year anyway,
It's
but I had
good.
already done that this year. So I was like, oh, I don't have to do it again. Oh, wait, no, I can do that again. There will always be more beer. It's not like it's ever going to go away. I can come
Yeah,
back
no,
to it if I want it.
that shit's been around literally for thousands of years from different
Yeah.
cultures, so beer ain't going
Yeah.
nowhere.
Okay. There'll always be more beer, always be more wine. I don't necessarily need the whiskey, but whiskey makes you sick when you're well. Whiskey when you're sick makes you well. So occasionally, you get a little stuffed up, little ishkabaha, whatever.
Clear out
But
the sinuses.
exactly. But it was one of those things that I had to be like, okay, just you need to pay better attention and stay present, because who knows what could happen. And I took a nice break and came back significantly less uh, boozy. Put it that way.
That's it. Just that level of like self-awareness of what was going on is definitely worth noting and praising because not a lot of people, feel comfortable looking at themselves or like analyzing themselves like in any given moment like that and be like, "Oh, I'm not really happy with this," or like, "I don't really like how I feel with this," and just going, "Oh, maybe I need to adjust this," because it's another thing, especially in like, the United States and like Western culture is like, oh, it's bad to, you know, need to change. And the truth
Right.
is, it's not bad to change. I mean, like, you change your clothes every day, you change your underwear
Yeah.
every day. It's like you got to
Change
change
is a
some things.
constant.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
we're constantly growing. You know,
Yeah.
my face changes because I have to shave my beard every few days. Like it's a slight change. Sometimes I just shave it off
Right.
completely, but like it's okay to change. It's okay to grow as a person. I think
Exactly.
with all the work that you're doing too, the fact that you're able to look at yourself and go, "Oh, I'm drinking more than I really want to, more than I feel comfortable doing. I'm gonna pause."
Yeah.
That's you get a golf clap. If you were in person, I would
Oh
give you a
gosh.
hug, but
One of these days, we're gonna hang out again.
well, we're now in the same city, so like we can actually
I
hang out again.
know. Exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
Oh man. Yeah, it's definitely been an education. Everything that happens healthcare wise is, I take that as a big education, big learning opportunity, because one, I don't necessarily trust the medical
mm.
establishment wholeheartedly. I want to know my numbers. I want to know, how what my cholesterol is looking like, what my blood pressure is looking like, those things.
You want data.
But yeah, and then I'll take that information and apply what I know, as opposed to saying, "Oh, dear doctor, I've got high cholesterol. What do you got for me?" I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. And that's part of the whole MS thing.
Hmm.
And, when we went to the neurologist and he got put on another medication, which I'm okay, I'm not too nervous about because it's a vitamin. But the doctor, okay, and this doctor, he's adorable, but he like really smart guy, but he moves too fast.
Yeah.
Um, we were in there. He was like, okay, here's how you give this medication. Here's how you take it. You're going to do it this once a day, blah, blah, blah. And then my guy's like, okay, for how long? He's like, for the rest of your life. He was gone. He was down the hallway before the last word
Wow.
came out of his mouth. I'm like, oh, you know how to deliver bad news, son. Like, come on.
It's like
What?
bad news distraction. Bye.
Yeah,
Smoke
yeah,
bomb.
yeah. Exactly. He disappeared in a gust of smoke. And it's like,
Oh
and we're both
God.
like, wait, what? How's that? What'd you say?
Come
Forever?
again? Can you repeat that?
Right? And, that sort of thing, I'm kind of like, I don't want to get caught up in, especially with something so pharmaceutical. Like what he's got for the rest of his life, this is a vitamin. I'm okay with that. You
Yeah,
know, I'm comfortable with that because I know what it is and I know how it functions in the body and
yeah,
I know
which
why
makes
he
sense.
needs it. But, you know, give me the information and I will act on it. Don't
Which
give
I
me a pill and tell me I never will be off of it.
Yeah, but like, what is the pill? Why do I need this pill? Explain. I feel like, a lot of people also kind of just rely on, they're like, oh, a doctor, they know what they're talking about. And it's like, okay, but you should still have a basic understanding of how your body is working because regardless of how well educated or how experienced a medical professional is, no one is ever going to know your body better than you because you are literally
Mm-hmm.
living in your body. So if you have an
Yeah.
understanding of how your body works, plus how like nutrients work in general, and then how those nutrients work with your body, you have a leg up, and
Mm-hmm.
you're able to communicate better with those medical professionals to get the best treatment and advice that you can, which you yourself
Exactly.
are apparently another perfect example for. Because again, I've known you for I don't know, like 5 years at this point, give or take, and this is the first
Right.
I even knew
At
that you had
least.
MS.
Right. I don't wear the t-shirt anymore, but I forget sometimes. In fact, when I had that attack last year, it took me about 3 days to realize what was happening to me. And the only time I had had that symptom before, it lasted for about 2 hours. This
Oh,
time it lasted for a whole week.
oh wow.
So, and this was what is called the MS hug, which basically feels like your rib cage is in a vice grip
Oh,
and it hurts. And every time you breathe, you're fighting against something. And
ow,
and it felt like sometimes that vice was hot and just closing in on my ribs.
ouch.
And I was just like, what is going on? And then I remembered. And then I texted my old neurologist, the one who was like, hey, I've got another thing for you. And I hadn't seen him since that day,
Hmm.
many, many, many moons ago. But uh, he was like, oh, yeah, it sounds like the MS hug. Just, do what you would normally do for your symptoms, but double it. And so I doubled up on my omega 3s, doubled up on my vitamin D, doubled up on XYZ. And one morning I woke up and I could move, I could stretch, I could breathe. It was amazing,
Good.
you know.
Again, it's
So,
how important like proper nutrition is too.
indeed. And
Uh,
that's a lot of the problems that we have is because we are not properly nourished.
yeah,
And
just looking at our parents and our grandparents and all the health issues that they had. Mild sidetrack. Like recently just went through a whole bunch of like old family photos that someone had brought up because they were going like a distant family member passed away a few months ago, going through all these old
mm,
pictures. And my aunt was pointing out people and saying who they were and pointing out roughly about how old they were. And they
mm,
were, some of them were like 10 or 15 years younger than what my aunt is now. And they looked
okay.
20 years older than what she is now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, that is blowing my mind that is even thing. Because, that at that point, people are just like pumping, processed shit into their veins,
Yeah.
via like cans. But now,
Yeah.
like, obviously, we have a better understanding of how food nutrition work. And we're like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't put that formaldehyde in the, Cheerios.
Right. Oh God, that sounds horrible. Who put the formaldehyde in the Cheerios? Not me. Oh my God.
Asbestos
Yeah.
flakes, better than
Yes.
cornflakes.
Well, knowing how the sausage is made, it's part of the key to knowing, you know, why you're sick.
Yeah. And a lot of
Yeah.
times it's what you're eating and not knowing and all the shit that they put in as like preservatives as well.
Oh yeah. Like I recently had an outbreak of eczema, which I usually only get when I eat dairy products.
Mm.
I've been off dairy products for what feels like a million years. I miss cheese, like I miss, the forests of the Great Northwest. But I had to do some digging, and I found out that something that I ate had some milk in it. So I was like, okay,
Oh,
well, I'm not going to eat that, product again.
that stinks.
And you know, it takes patience. It takes the willingness to give up things that you absolutely love. I mean, my kingdom for a plate of burrata or something like
Oh my God.
really. Okay,
You're making me
see?
hungry.
Okay?
Uh,
I'm
I,
always hungry. But
I,
anyway, yeah.
I, I feel your pain, and as your friend, I offer to eat all the cheese for you, so you don't have to deal with that.
Okay. Just don't let me watch, because then I'll be like, can I just no.
I got you. I'll turn around and eat all the cheese for you, so this way you won't be tempted.
Boom. Boom. Brion Croot, out of my sight.
Well, Kat, thank you so much for taking the time to chat for the show, and thank you so much for being so honest and open about like what you and your boyfriend have been going through. Because, you know, dealing with it personally is not easy, and then like I can only imagine like how how difficult it can be to open up about this to other people, especially in like a public forum. So again, I very much appreciate you doing so.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I feel like also this is important information. People need to understand, first of all, if they're going through something like this, that they're not alone. If they're going through something like that there are ways to handle it. Um, and there are ways not to handle it. Um, I dig what you do. This is a really smart podcast,
Well,
and
thank
I've
you. I
seen a
have
couple
smart guests
episodes,
like
and
yourself, so
well, I have smart friends like yourself, so it's all good. Um, yeah, it was great. Thank you so much, and you would definitely do this very well. So I'm
oh, well,
I'm
thank you.
pleased to be a part of it.
Well,
Yeah.
I am honored that you are now part of the Conquer Your Battlefield family.
Rock
Mhm.
on. Excellent. Can't wait to see you shred again, too.
I can't wait to shred again. So hopefully soon.
Do
Keeping fingers
it.
crossed.
Yes, yes, please. All of them. Fingers, toes, eyes. I got it all.
Tentacles,
Yeah.
what have you. Ah, well,
Yeah.
well, folks, I truly believe that the more that we as a society feel comfortable opening up about our struggles, the more it will help others to realize that we are not alone, like Kat said. Everyone has the inner strength to face whatever life puts along their path. So thank you again, Kat, for taking the time to chat, and thank you to everyone that has tuned into this episode. If anyone watching or listening finds that they are struggling with their mental health, please do not be afraid to reach out to your friends, family, or a mental health professional. I will place a link in the description of this video that will have some information and connection to further resources. And until next time, remember, you always have the strength to conquer your battlefield.